How is someone supposed to learn art when there are so many little fundamentals that they have to master? And each one of those fundamentals seems like a mini subject in and of itself that takes months and months to master. And then we have to connect all of these fundamentals together to create a beautiful drawing. Is that even possible for the regular person? Yes, but only if you think in systems. I have spent hundreds of hours aimlessly trying to learn art because I was always chasing the next goal, how to draw the body, how to learn perspective, but never actually getting anywhere. And that was reflected in my art. But when I switched from goal-oriented learning to systems-oriented learning, that gave me back control over my own learning and allowed me to see progress in my art. And now I wasn't stuck in this hamster wheel of jumping from one tutorial to the next tutorial, hoping that I would get better at this skill that I really wanted to get good at. So in this video, I'm going to explain what system thinking is and how to apply it towards art so we can become the masters of drawing that we want to be. So what does it mean to think in terms of systems? The main idea of using systems thinking is to stop relying on willpower and motivation. We want to reduce how much we rely on these two things and instead build processes that automatically help us achieve our goals. And when you find the process that helps you, you chain them together and this creates your system. Most people don't practice art in terms of system thinking. They practice in terms of goal-oriented thinking. I need to learn how to draw the body. I need to learn how to draw the eyes. I need to learn how to shade. But when you're living life, it's difficult to turn those intentions into reality. And maybe if you're proactive, you might turn one of those intentions into a plan. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to sit down for an hour, look up some tutorial on how to do shading, and then I'm going to practice that. But what happens if life gets in the way of that? What happens if you're not motivated? What happens if in 3 days you haven't even started yet? You're left with this feeling of frustration. Again, your attempts at trying to learn how to draw something have given you no fruition. So let's look at the same problem through the lens of system thinking. And there are 3 principles that I want to keep in the forward of our mind that will allow us to activate this way of thinking with art. The first principle is holistic thinking. The idea of holistic thinking is to see something objectively, but also see how it connects to the larger whole. But to understand principle number 1, holistic thinking, we need to activate principle number 2, which is repetition. The plan or the system that we're going to create needs to be a repeatable process. And most of the time when we're studying art, we rely completely on willpower or motivation. And when we rely on these things, it goes against the idea of repeatability. We want to build this system so that it has as little friction as possible. So we can do this consistently over a long period of time. That's what allows us to actually get better at art. So for example, let's say you work at a job or you go to school. After a full day of work, you still want to learn how to get better at the skill of drawing. But not everyone wants to turn their brain back into that active learning state and learn certain fundamentals that aren't that enjoyable to draw in the first place. And that's totally fine, that's valid. There's sometimes that you just want to sit and you want to draw. But a lot of us have 2 opposing voices in our heads. We want to draw and just have fun, but we also want to get good at learning how to draw. We want to be able to draw something beautiful and be proud of what we draw on the piece of paper. So it depends on which voice you're going to feed into. Now, the most common answer is just to say, okay, dig deep. Forget about if you're tired, just use your willpower, get into this practice session and get it done. But the thing is that the brain doesn't really like that way of thinking. Now, it's okay to expose yourself to that environment from time to time, but in terms of learning art, it's not a very repeatable process to expose yourself to. And it's going to make the task of learning how to draw better 100 times more difficult. So if we go back and try to look at how we can make this process easier, more repeatable, maybe instead of studying at the end of the workday, we can slot it into our break periods when we're eating and do a couple of small sketches around the topic that we're trying to learn in art. But then we need to flip that idea on its head and see maybe why would that not work? Okay, well, on my breaks, I'm usually sitting with a group of my friends and we're all chatting and I'm interacting with them, and trying to learn how to draw while I'm talking to all my friends is not going to be something that's easy to do. So again, we need to look at that and try to find a workaround there to holistically think about what way can we make this work? Well, maybe every other day I can eat by myself, and after I finish eating, I can be in a quiet place and spend my little break on focusing on a certain fundamental in art. But maybe that's not an option. Maybe there's some obstacles in the way that make that a no-go. So how can we change that again? How can we find a different option that's viable for us? Maybe you can change the time of day that you study art. Maybe you do it right in the morning before you go to work, when you're fresh and your mind is clean. Well, the issue is maybe you don't have enough time to draw right in the morning before you go to work or go to school. So maybe we can see if we can change our nighttime schedule so that we can go to bed earlier, so that allows for that brief period of time before work to study on the art. So you see how we go back and forth between thinking holistically and trying to find a repeatable process that allows us to do this over and over again, to find the easiest and most comfortable place that we can study, that will form that system for us. Now, when you're making these changes to how you're learning, it might feel a little bit uncomfortable because it's different. But I've learned that that different that we feel is the different that will allow for different results. And the uncomfortable feeling that you're feeling isn't actually as uncomfortable as that feeling that you get when you're not doing what you want to be doing. So if you're in that place where you're disappointed at the fact that you haven't achieved your art goals, just know that this feeling that you're feeling right now is worse than making the change towards your habits, towards your systems that will allow you to achieve those art goals. Now, principle number 3 are quick fixes. No matter where you are, when you're just starting to build your system, there are going to be holes within your system. One of those holes might be that you find it very difficult to spend extended periods of time focusing on one subject, or if you're waking up earlier, you find it difficult to stay awake while you're focusing on something like art. The first quick fix, the first little plugger of the hole might be to completely eradicate all distractions in your immediate environment so you can focus, or taking a cold shower when you wake up so that you're more energized and awake before you start your learning session. Now, all of these things give you a quick fix, but they don't address the underlying issue that's there. And the reason that principle number 3 even exists is because in the beginning, you can't always get rid of those holes right away because they're ingrained in our habits. And to change the habits, it's going to take a little bit of time. So while we're working on changing the habits in our day-to-day life, we have these little band-aids, these quick fixes that allow us to still get these results while working in the background on the habits that are causing these underlying issues. Now, for that specific example of you finding it difficult to focus on drawing or do something for an extended period of time, I would recommend doing something like a dopamine detox, where you put away all social media, no more random texting, no more doom scrolling from websites like TikTok, all the way, for us artists on Pinterest, anything that is giving us those quick little dopamine hits and ruining our reward system. That will give you back that ability to focus for a long period of time. And as a side benefit, you'll also be more motivated to learn how to draw. Because right now, we get all of our dopamine from the phone. But if we take away that source of dopamine, the brain will begin to reset back to its factory settings, and now look for the dopamine through doing a task like drawing. Naturally, you'll be pulled toward drawing just because you took away this cheap, fast dopamine source that all of us have so much instant access to. Now, doing all of these things to create a system just to get better at art might seem like it causes a lot more discomfort or it takes a lot more effort. But the crucial thing to remember is that it is the same amount of discomfort. It is the same amount of effort, if not even less. The only thing that is being said here is that there is a different way to go about learning art that might be easier than your current way and more beneficial towards actually learning the skill of drawing. Now, if you want to learn how the brain is learning when you're engaging in that practice zone, so that whatever you're spending your time on is actually being put to use and stays in your brain, maybe check out this video here where I break down the process that the brain enjoys the most for learning, so that you can actually master art quickly and achieve those art goals when you put together the system of learning art. I'll see you in the next one.